What's up, guys? Tim Mott here, alongside Dave Spadaro, the Eagles Insider, to get us an inside look at Eagles training camp right now. Dave, you're one of the few people that's actually there every single day. You get to see these players practice. We had full pads yesterday. Let's go for a broad takeaway of training camp, only a couple days in so far in 2023.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to judge players right now. I mean, certainly you can see what you see and say what you saw. I would tell you broadly, very good energy, very high execution. Thomas, I've been around long enough. When you are watching something that has a chance to be special, and
Right.
that's what that's how I kind of characterize this team. This is a very talented team. They are ingrained, especially offensively. They're in sync. The timing is terrific. The talent level is high. Defensively, some new pieces coming together, but you see flashes of talent that get you excited. And broadly, what's most important as you look around the NFL, knocking on wood here, they're healthy. And I don't see a hangover. I don't feel a hangover in the building. I feel a team that is understanding that it's starting a new season and understands you have to approach it that way, step by step by step. But certainly very impressed with the early goings here as we are in the second week of training camp.
I want to start with Jalen Hurts because I'm obviously not there, and a lot of people who have content creation channels or are on Twitter aren't at practices, and so we're only reading stats, or we're reading what beat writers are saying, or we're following you on Twitter at Eagles Insider. But everything I keep hearing about Jalen Hurts is that this is the best training camp of any Eagles quarterback since Carson Wentz in 2017. He hasn't thrown an interception. The ball's barely touching the grass. He's not throwing a lot of incompletions. Are you seeing the same thing with Jalen Hurts going into year 3 as a starter?
I mean, it's very clear that he and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and Quez Watkins has had a really good first week and a day. They look I think Jalen is third year in the system, knows where to go with the football, no indecisiveness, very accurate. Great guys. Wearing the red jersey, though, Thomas, right? So don't touch him. But yeah, I remember last year going into training camp, there were a lot of concerns. Oh, he had this bad day in the spring, and somebody made a big deal about it, and everybody's concerned about Jalen Hurts, and everybody's kind of holding their breath early in training camp. That's not the case at all now. He is on point, and is rising. I mean, the guy's going to be 25 years old on August 7th, so he's certainly having a great camp. The offense looks outstanding, and new additions are making a difference. You see different things than we saw last year in the offense.
A couple of those new additions offensively are really the running back spot, right? Gainwell and Boston Scott are still there. They're going to be heavily mixed in this what is going to be running back by committee group. AndreSwift, and more specifically, I want to ask you about Rashaad Penny, because Penny to me feels like the wild card on that rushing attack, right? He's either going to get injured, as he has been the past couple of seasons, or if he stays healthy, we've seen what he can do in spurts with Seattle. What have you seen from Rashaad Penny so far? Still early in training camp.
Looks like he's in great shape. I mean, I had read that in Seattle he had played as much as and weighed as much as 240 pounds. I don't see that from him. I see a little bit slimmed down version, which maybe helps him stay healthy. I think that's kind of the idea. Runs with power, catches the ball better than I thought. I agree with you. I think, look, Rashaad Penny, in his career, first-round draft pick of the Seattle Seahawks, has averaged 6.2 yards per carry,
right.
Has 5 plays of 30-plus yards over that span. I mean, this is a guy who, when he has been healthy, he has been dominant. And in this offense, with this offensive line, fingers crossed, if you can keep him healthy, he would be primed for a huge year as they share the responsibilities with AndreSwift, who's Brian Westbrook / Darren Sproles / LeSean McCoy.
Wow.
With Kenny Gainwell, who can do all of those things as well. With Boston Scott, who we've seen runs hard inside, kills the New York Giants, returns kickoffs, does a lot of everything. And then another wild card is Trey Sermon, who I'm really excited to see in the preseason. Can he get back to that level where he earned a second-round draft pick status from the San Francisco 49ers after dominating at Oklahoma and Ohio State? Hasn't found his place in the NFL, knows that this is a really important year in his NFL career, and so far has looked terrific.
You mentioned that offensive line, obviously building holes for these running backs. The main battle that everyone keeps circling is the right guard spot. And while I'd kind of said this whole offseason, it's going to be hard to pry it away from Cam Jurgens just because he has a year already in the system. Tyler Steen, he's big, he's physical, he's an SEC tackle moving over to guard, and a lot of people like him. We got our first look, or at least I guess you got your first look at him in pads, in one-on-ones yesterday. Did you see anything from Tyler Steen that would make you think he's going to compete for that right guard spot, or is it kind of Cam Jurgens to lose right now?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good question. First, I'll answer the first part. Yeah, Tyler is a big, strong, athletic, learning his way at the guard position, going in one-on-ones against great defensive tackles. Won some, lost some. That's to be expected, but there certainly is a high upside with Tyler Steen. Cam Jurgens, my concern was, okay, at 310 pounds, next to 310 pounds, is that big enough, Jason Kelsey and Cam Jurgens, when
Right.
you have a player like Vita Vea waiting for you in Tampa Bay, 346 pounds of power? Big, strong defensive tackles are going to try to overpower the Eagles. So far, Jurgens has played with great leverage. Again, I saw him yesterday do a number on Jalen Carter, work against Fletcher Cox, work against Jordan Davis. He really, really is technically sound, incredibly athletic. And Thomas, where you notice the benefit of Cam Jurgens is in the screen game, getting Kelsey and Jurgens out into space in the second level. The screen game is something that the Eagles, back in the days of Westbrook and LeSean McCoy, and even Sproles, although it was more wheel route with Sproles, this hasn't really been a part of the offense since then. And with Jurgens out there, all sorts of possibilities open up because they're so athletic getting to the second level. So I think the Eagles have options there. They're pleased with both. I would tell you right now, Jurgens clearly has the advantage, but there's going to be 3 preseason games, and I would expect both of them to play at least a couple of those games.
I think a lot of question marks about the offense really center around Brian Johnson. He obviously was here and quarterback coach this past season. He has a great connection that dates back years with Jalen Hurts. And yet there are some people, at least from a national media perspective, who said, oh, well, the offense was Shane Steichen. Shane Steichen called some incredible plays. He got the Eagles in the right situations. He built Jalen Hurts into what he is, which, of course, for Eagle fans, and I think for you is a little ridiculous. Brian Johnson, though, do you see there being a change in the offensive ball? Do you see him mixing in some stuff, or is he going to kind of take what worked best with Shane Steichen and roll with that going into 2023?
Well, let's be clear. This is Nick Sirianni's offense, and Nick's just not calling the plays on game days. But during the course of the week, it's Nick, it's Jeff Stoutland, it's Brian Johnson, etc., putting the game plan together, putting in situations on their chart where they kind of know, boom, 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 this is what we're going to call. Boom. In this situation, we are going to call this play. So it was never Shane's offense. It's not going to be Brian's offense. Certainly they have an impact and a significant impact, but it is Nick Sirianni's offense. And I think Brian is going to add his imprint. There's motion that he's going to add. There's play selection. I think I've seen more screens and more running backs moving around the formation than I saw with Miles Sanders. And so I think that versatility, he understands that he can play into it. But I do think Brian's going to put his imprint. I think he's going to have his personality known. He had a great success at University of Florida calling plays. I just don't think, Thomas, that this offense will skip a beat. I think, in fact, that they will expand their repertoire with Brian, a new perspective, some new players, some new talents. It's all really very exciting.
I think the last time you and I spoke, a little over a year ago, Nick Sirianni was going into year 2, right? He had not necessarily done, or going into year 1, I would say, because we were talking about the Chip Kelly comparison and how he differs to Doug Peterson. Now that we enter into a post-Super Bowl training camp with Nick Sirianni, who's established himself now as at least a very good head coach. I've seen rankings have him at 5, have him at 10, 15. Is his overall persona in this training camp different after the Super Bowl than where it was last year?
No, and I think that it's very important that he stays the same and that he understands that the players don't and the team doesn't take shortcuts, and that the mantra of connect, compete, accountability, football IQ, fundamentals, one day at a time, 1% better, all of that has to stay the same. Once you change your message and if you change your approach, it generally leads down the path of destruction. So, the schedule's the same as it's been in the past. The practices have been the same as they've been in the past. I know people have made a big deal about Nick being animated at practice. I can tell you that he's always animated.
Right.
He's just a high energy person. The only difference, really, Thomas, is that he's carrying a bullhorn now, and so everybody can kind of hear what he's saying. But in the past, we've had him mic'd up at practice. He's always been really animated, doesn't let things slide at practice. I don't notice a difference in Nick, other than, look, he's been down the road before. You have more confidence when that happens. But the day-to-day, nothing changed. He's still telling the same stories. He's still trying to rearrange some players in some competition, trying to present some new movies and inspirational moments and great anecdotes. But the day-to-day, the concept, they are all the same.
I want to get to a couple of players that we've not seen a lot of reports on. I promised my subscribers that I'd ask these questions because you're at least there.
Sure.
But we don't get tweets on a couple of these guys. I just want to get your thoughts on what you've seen so far. Moro Jomo, he was someone that I think every single Eagles draft, there's one late round draft pick that all Eagle fans instantly go, oh, this 6th or 7th rounder is going to be the steal of the draft. And Moro was basically that guy. And I was trying to be like, okay, well, give him some time here. We've seen 0 tweets and 0 updates on this guy, at least from my perspective. What have you seen so far?
Yeah, I mean, a rookie working his way up and down the defensive line, certainly not overmatched. The Eagles like him a lot. I'm going to reserve judgment until we get to the preseason.
Right.
Haven't seen him blown away anybody. I haven't seen him being blown away by anybody. It's just what you see little flashes from him, more as an interior defensive lineman. So excited to see him. I think the tell will be in the preseason.
Okay. What about someone like Eli Ricks, the undrafted free agent out of Alabama? The cornerbacks they're very deep, but he was kind of the one undrafted free agent player that everyone went, oh, he might be able to make the roster. Anything from him so far?
Physical guy. Saw him once in the open field get really just juked out of his socks by Boston Scott. Not fair in that situation, no pads. Everybody gets juked out by Boston Scott in that instance. I think Eli's got a ways to go, but he looks great in uniform. The body's fantastic. The skills are there. It's really, Thomas, it comes down to consistency, and you have to be great every day. And I see Eli as more of a developmental kind of player.
One more, and then we'll move on here to some other questions. What about Zach McPherson, right? Obviously, again, cornerback is very, very deep. He's battling with Eli Ricks. Is he kind of locked into the backup behind Slay or Bradbury? It feels like it's kind of time for McPherson to earn his spot potentially on this roster.
I agree. Now, he's done a really good job on special teams in the past. And with Avonte Maddox still coming back from that toe injury, McPherson's been the one in the slot as the nickel cornerback. So done a good job there. Eagles kind of slid him very innocuously into that nickel position and is holding his own for sure against some really tough players. Look, I'll tell you, Olamide Zacchaeus is quick and explosive and dangerous in a short area. And I think Zach has done a good job battling him.
Okay, perfect. Sidney Brown, he is obviously one of the draft picks that everyone is very, very excited about. He spent, I think, with the 3rd team and then moved up to the 2nd team either yesterday or the day before. The question a lot of Eagle fans have is this a guy who could actually push to start day one? Because we've heard that basically it's been Reed Blankenship as a for sure starter, at least so far, and then they've mixed people around at the number 2 or the other safety spot. The odds of Brown starting day one right now are what?
I mean, Terrell Edmonds is experienced in the NFL. I think at this point I would lean toward Edmonds and Reed Blankenship. Blankenship in his 2nd year, extremely cerebral, athletic. I mean, doesn't make a mistake.
Right.
A way better player than anybody thinks he is. But I'll tell you, Sidney Brown is somebody that prepares well, mature beyond his years, physically gifted, has all the traits, will make a push. As a starter day one, I think that's a bit of a long shot, but certainly somebody who the Eagles will look at and prepare to start, given the long season, given the stress at that position. They are very, very, very high on him.
Okay. I don't know if you know this, but I think the most popular player right now, at least on Eagles Twitter and in the content creation community, is Christian Ellis. Everybody cannot believe that we suddenly have this year 2 guy who no one ever heard of last year, starting in 11-on-11s yesterday, intercepting Marcus Mariota and Jalen Smith at OTAs. Everybody thinks this guy is going to be legit. I'm trying to buy into the hype. It just feels like the Eagles have never really had that superstar linebacker, and I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar. Is Christian Ellis legit? Is he actually going to start, would you say, day one for the Eagles season?
I would imagine Nicholas Morrow has the upper hand there. Free agent from Chicago. Right. Again, experienced, played 100% of the snaps for the Bears last year. He and Kobe Dean and Hassan Reddick. listen, Christian Ellis comes from the famous Ellis family. Luther Ellis, his father. Luther Ellis, a great player with the Detroit Lions. I think there's 7 or 8 Ellises, some of whom are adopted. Very religious family, football playing family. Christian prepares like nobody, takes it extremely seriously. His brother Noah is on this team as well as a defensive tackle who's also a prospect the Eagles are watching. Christian has made plays from the spring. And actually, Thomas, last year when he played, he did really well on special teams.
Right.
And he made some plays from the linebacker position. I don't think he's a superstar, but he's a good football player. And at some point, I believe he will be a factor at the linebacker position. He's made plays through the spring, early part of training camp here. It's not just a one-day wonder, but he is a professional, a high motor, physical, really strong candidate to be a factor at the linebacker position.
Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith are, I mean, to me, 2 of the best first-round draft picks that Philadelphia's had in a long time. Now, they have to prove that. They got to go out in the football field, obviously in preseason games in the actual year to showcase that. However, I think a lot of Eagle fans have a couple of maybe over expectations for them. They think that Jalen Carter is going to win every single rep in one-on-ones, and Nolan Smith is the fastest outside linebacker to rush the passer in the history of the NFL. What have you seen from them in terms of expectations for year one? Are they sky high? Are they defensive rookie of the year high? Or is it, year one, we're going to learn. Year one, we're going to get 4 or 5 sacks maybe. And then 2, 3, 4, we kind of mold into that star category.
It's such a hard question to answer, but I will tell you that the Eagles are, they see these 2 players as incredibly talented. Nolan is very fast. Like he just flashes at you. He just jumps out at you. Jalen off the ball, quick, burst, strong, powerful, low, relentless. I mean, again, so how are you going to be able to use Nolan Smith? And this is where I think it's interesting to see what Sean Desai has in mind here. What's he going to do? How's he going to use Reddick? Can he use Reddick and Nolan Smith?
Right.
I think you want to get as many pass rushers on the field as possible. But they're both very, very gifted. They're both pushing for playing time. I don't think they're going to be content with being, developed and kind of pigeonholed into that box of expectations. I think the expectations are really high for both of them. Year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think the Eagles realize they got something talented, very, very special in both Carter and Smith, both of whom are playing at positions that happen to have a lot of talent. So Carter will work in the rotation with Fletch and Milton Williams and Jordan Davis, etc. And Nolan Smith is going to have to work in there at the outside on the edge with Hassan Reddick and Kyron Johnson and see what he can do. But they bring it every day. And this moment, look, all these dogs here, all these Georgia Bulldogs, this environment, this tempo, this level of talent, none of this is too big for those players.
Just to confirm, right, there hasn't been any broken practice sleds or anything like that from Jalen Carter so far, right?
No, so it's an expression. So when he's out there, he is extremely powerful. He breaks sleds, as they say. Really forces sleds, pounds sleds. I mean, it's just he's so talented. I mean, we knew when we saw Fletcher Cox how talented he was.
Right.
When you watch Jalen Carter, you feel that same kind of talent, that level of talent. It's quite rare.
Is there anybody we're not talking about right now that maybe the media's glanced over that you've seen at practice that's surprising you a little bit?
I mean, I think Quez Watkins. I think people are talking about him just a little bit. He has had a really. I know fans. I know how you feel about Quez. But he had a really great spring. He's had an excellent first week plus of training camp here. I think there's a lot of depth at the offensive line, which I'm really excited about. Tyree Jackson has had a nice kind of comeback. Like, had the early enthusiasm, momentum, former quarterback, great story. What an athlete, big, tall, Jimmy Graham.
Right.
And he gets hurt. And then he gets hurt, and he doesn't really kind of come back. Now he's come back, and he's made plays here early in training camp. Defensively, it's so hard to tell. The pads just went on for that first time. Mm-hmm. I mean, Justin Evans, I think, has played well at safety, coming over from the Saints. And I think the punter competition, I know that's a fan interest. Both Sipas and Zentner are battling it out. That will be decided in the preseason, both as holders and as punters. And I think that is a real competition.
Do you give the leg up to either one of those yet?
I give it to Siposs because he's got more experience in the NFL. You never know how a young guy's going to react under the bright lights of a preseason game, which I know is not a regular season game, but it's still bigger than anything that Kansas State has faced here in the last many years. And
Right.
so Zetner will have some pressure on him starting August 12th.
Howie Roseman is always lurking, right? Whether you see him in the background at practice watching all these players or he's, lurking in the National Football League to make moves. And I don't know if I buy into all the Twitter rumors that are out there, but you see people say, oh, Howie's sniffing around this, he's sniffing around that. He made a move for C.J. Gardner-Johnson last training camp, and it paid off really well. Do you expect him to try and make a move? I just don't see a hole it needs to be plugged right now for the Eagles to go back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that Howie will always challenge the roster. So do I think he will try to do something? I think he always tries to do something.
Right.
I don't think there was a glaring need at safety going into the regular season last year. It was very apparent to everyone. I agree with you. I don't see an apparent need, but I think Howie will always challenge the roster. So I never count him out. I never think he's sitting around content. We'll see. Will it be a blockbuster? Hey, I have no idea, but I really will tell you that this team has gone, Thomas, from the Super Bowl most talented team I'd seen last year. Such a shame that this Eagles team didn't play its best game in the Super Bowl. Instead of rebuilding, they've reloaded. They have put together an outstanding roster, and it's really fun to watch a team with so many young players and so many established Pro Bowl, All-Pro level players going at it every day. Eagles are off to a terrific start.
One quick question on the Super Bowl. I don't think anyone's asked you this. The field conditions. Any take on the field conditions for the Super Bowl? Long time ago, but
yeah, but
it wasn't. The field conditions weren't good. They were the same for both teams. Both teams wore the same cleats, so it wasn't that. I mean, it was sloppy and unlike the NFL in a really bad situation.
One more here, and then I'll go ahead and let you go. Sean Desai. Sean Desai has a very interesting job this year, not just being defensive coordinator, but not being Jonathan Gannon. I think Eagle fans, listen, Gannon had some good numbers. I think he had some good games, but you go against great quarterbacks, he seemed to struggle. And then the whole Arizona Cardinal thing with the Super Bowl, I think rubbed people really the wrong way, whether rightfully so or not. Desai's job, though, is to not be Gannon. And so I think he's gotten a little bit of a pass being a first-year defensive coordinator from the media, not necessarily ripping him, but being critical. What have you seen so far from Sean Desai, and how has he differed from Jonathan Gannon?
Really meticulous. I mean, look, I have the highest regard for Jonathan Gannon. I thought that he was terrific. The Eagles were number one in the league against the pass. And I know the quarterback thing, but they were good. They were the year before. I know they patched it together, and it was a bend but don't break kind of defense for folks. Last year, they didn't need to blitz. They had 70 sacks. I mean, you don't need if you don't need to blitz, you don't blitz. The disappointing part was that in the Super Bowl, the Eagles didn't adjust and get off the field, and all they needed was to get one stop, and they win the Super Bowl. And he knew it was going to be a game of adjustments, so that was not his best game. It was not the Eagles' defense best game. That said, Sean comes in here, 5 new faces, and new places to start. Got some work to do here. I think he's trying to figure out what he's going to do with his players. I think he's installing the defense. There's different verbiage here. I think he's a very good teacher, great communicator, not as kind of outwardly personable in the way that Jonathan was, but relates really well to the players, and the players have seemed to respond. I see a fast defense. I see a defense that dominates up front. I've not seen a ton of blitzing, but I've seen some strategic blitzing.
Okay.
Nakobe Dean, for example, and it's been very effective. So I think Sean has a lot of tricks that he can pull up out of his bag. But from a base standpoint, largely the same defense, largely the same scheme, with maybe a little bit more pressure built in if you need to bring it.
Well, listen, there are not many people who are in and around the Eagles every single day. And for the first week and a half of training camp, everyone outside of Philadelphia is just trying to get a little peek inside what you've been seeing. And so I appreciate you coming on and helping out the viewers. And we'll see what happens, right? Still early. You're going to get your first back-to-back coming up on Thursday and Friday. And so more pads being on, and then preseason just a couple of weeks away. Dave, I always appreciate you coming on.
Thomas, anytime. And I can just tell you that, look, the peak is that in the building, great energy. Team starts a new year for the Philadelphia Eagles. What they did last year, disappointing at the very end, but great until that point. This team wants to go one step further, and they're off to a great start.
Perfect. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. We'll have you on again.
Thanks, Thomas.